So hello everybody. We are presenting here our IEECP Lunch Seminars, which refer to specific projects we are working on and mainly present the results of the projects. The idea of these lunch seminars, as we have explained also in the previous ones, they are online first of all in our YouTube channel, and what we try to do is show in a consistent way in 15-20 minutes to the general audience and to the people interested in our projects what the main findings are. And this means that some of these seminars are being repeated over time with the new findings that each project generates. Today we'll be discussing about the ENSMOV project, so it's a Horizon 2020 project. The full title is Enhancing the Implementation, Monitoring and Verification Practices of Energy Saving Policies under Article 7 of the EED. This project has started some months ago. It's one of the key projects we're working on, and let's go a bit more in detail to see what it is. Okay, so primarily we refer to the implementation of the Energy Efficiency Directive and a specific article we'll see in a bit, and these are the countries that are being represented. So we could claim that we have a whole EU 27-28 coverage now. And also we have more interested countries that are want to learn about what the lessons of these projects are. Now, primarily, just for us to get a clear idea of what we're talking about on the Article 7, for those who are not familiar, it's one of the most important articles of the Energy Efficiency Directive, and maybe one of the most difficult ones. So in essence, for the period of 2021 to 2030, now we're on the recast of the Energy Efficiency Directive, Member States must achieve savings each year equivalent to 0.8% annual final energy consumption. And in essence, this obliges Member States to achieve real energy savings and demonstrate how they are being achieved through a whole monitoring process. Then the main policies implemented under the Article 7 EED are energy efficiency obligations, so obligations to energy suppliers or distributors on delivering energy savings to their customers, but also alternative measures, which can be a whole broad set of different types of policies, from financial, information, voluntary agreements, regulations, etc. Both of these types of measures are being treated equally, so there is no really additional benefit in taking action early using one particular policy measure or not. Then another part that is being treated now more in detail in the recast, so in the new directive, is the energy poverty. Energy poverty is being taken as a kind of priority among the vulnerable households, and member states can implement specific policies to tackle energy poverty under the Article 7 ED. And last is that it, last but not least, clarifies the requirements regarding the lifetimes of measures and the additionality. And yeah, and of course the MRV, which is something we'll be discussing right now. Now, that's okay, more or less the duration of the project. In essence, what we try to do is we try to help and carry out capacity building to member states who need to receive information on how to implement the policies under the Article 7 for the new period, but also how to set up monitoring, reporting and verification schemes, which has a whole challenge on its own, given it requires data, it requires rules, it requires staff to do that. And therefore, this project will be kind of an exchange, knowledge exchange project between member states and ourselves acting in the middle as facilitators. Now, the strategic objective, as we said, is indeed for the policies to achieve the policies under Article 7 to achieve their targets, and also have a platform and community for knowledge exchange. So this thing should not finish by the end of the project, but should remain alive. That's a whole learning exchange, so it's a whole series of meetings and workshops and webinars, just for your information. And that's more or less the outputs, as you can see from the project. So there are gap analysis, webinars, and policy reports. It's important also to mention that that ENSMOV runs in parallel to other projects, significant ones, like the Concerted Action ED. But I would say that there are also thin lines which distinguish these projects. In essence, ENSMOV moves on not only to the administrative level, but also carries out analysis and the knowledge exchange within the entire stakeholder chain that is related to the Article 7 ED implementation, for instance. Now, The first element which we would like to present and where we have some nice findings is on there was a stakeholder survey carried out and also a gap analysis in order to understand what the real needs and what the real gaps in the implementation of the Article 7 EED for the forthcoming periods are. This is a report on the needs assessment from the stakeholders and also from the gap analysis that we mentioned. So there are two reports, public deliverables for the readers. The background of the survey. So in essence, there were 125 respondents. It was carried out in the summer, and the first group was the administrative level and energy environmental associations, while the second group of stakeholders were the broader stakeholders, as you can see, that are affected and work within the framework of the Article 7 EED parts. Now, the responses were quite diverse, although we had a lot of convergence within the responses. And let's see what are the most important problems in the implementation thus far. So, primarily, what is the challenge, the most important challenge is the sustainability of the energy efficiency obligation schemes or the alternative measures in terms of refinancing. And that has to do, for instance, with when we have markets that carry out shadow prices or through a certificate price like in Italy or in other countries, we have volatility of prices, and this needs to be tackled with in order to have kind of secure financing stream for the market players. Likewise, also when we have subsidy programs, the same thing holds where we need to have a clear mandate of what the subsidy will be, the level of the subsidy, so that businesses and suppliers or other parties who want to invest can make a clear cash flow. Then another part which is important on the need is it has to be clear what the side effects of an EEO scheme are, of the alternative measures. So that's something that policymakers would like to know in order to convey these messages better also to the target groups. A next part is the additionality of the energy efficiency, of the energy savings. Additionality is one of the most difficult points of this Article 7, as in essence it implies that all measures that are being implemented under the policies for the Article 7 must be additional to what would have happened without the effect of the policy. And yeah, this is one of the important parts, and here you can see a clear example when we have the early replacement and the baselines with the remaining life of the new equipment, for instance. Now, the next part is the cost. The cost element is not a criterion so far for, let's say, for the European Commission towards Article 7 ED policies, but it's something that member states, of course, do care, and they should care. And the idea is how to come up to policies that can minimize the costs for all parties involved. You know, this has to do normally when we set up policies and already from the beginning by involving a wide range of stakeholders from the design phase up to the implementation process. Why is that? Because having stakeholders on board already from the beginning can safeguard that the policies are being adapted to the capacity of the market, to what the existing technologies are and what can be really implemented, so we don't ask more than what the market can afford. And also the rules are quite clear to all market parties so they can operate on a fair ground and reduce their transaction administrative costs. Another element which is quite important for the stakeholder groups was the materiality of the energy savings. And by materiality we mean that these savings must take place, and we must demonstrate that these technologies were installed, that the savings did take place. And as we have seen from previous studies, indeed there was a whole unclarity, I would say, on the non-delivery and the materiality of the measures. So this means that in this period now things must be clearer, and the rules must be clear on how the materiality should take place. Now, when we go to the element of controlling, meaning the monitoring, reporting, and verification of the energy savings, again, we have the two stakeholder groups that carried out this needs assessment linked to the gap analysis, as I mentioned. And here, of course, things are more technical in essence that for the monitoring and reporting, it's important to define a sample size. So how many companies, target groups should be checked physically in their premises and or with the invoices and all these regular checks that take place in order to come up to a representative sample that can demonstrate that things have happened. Also, another element is to provide clear and specified guidelines on, of course, on the representative monitoring, reporting, and verification tools, calculation guidelines. There are a lot of bottom-up methodologies already in place from previous projects, and member states do use a type of bottom-up methodologies, but still things have to be not harmonized. It's not about harmonization, but it's about more capacity in order to come up to formulas that really address the problems and really address the savings, taking into account figures for rebound effects, for free riders, and such stuff that have to be proven. Then, of course, the provision of the MRV systems must be cost effective, so we should not go to very difficult MRV schemes that require, although could be more bulletproof, but maybe the cost could be quite high, so the entire system cost for the implementation of an EO or another policy could really go rocket high, and yeah, in essence, the whole thing could fail. And also, we would need guidelines for the verification requirements. So exactly how to measure the energy consumption before and after the measure was carried out. When we have energy performance certificates, for instance, in buildings, yes, these things can take place. But when we have other measures, for instance, non-building related, things will be more complicated and really more guidance there is required. The same thing, more or less, the same issues hold for the second stakeholder group, meaning for the let's say for all the organizations, not non-administrative bodies, let's say, for each country which participate in the schemes. Now, yeah, likewise here, for instance, about the sample size, and you can see a nice graph about the absolute and the relative sample size for the technical aspects for an MRV scheme. What should be the best, what not? Yeah, this has to do with the practical guidance. This is more or less the steps that we should be following to come up to practical guidance. Yeah, different ideas on cost-effective MRV schemes, how we have to do it, and of course, for each type of MRV schemes, there are different costs entailed. So if we could just maybe wrap up briefly what the studies have shown, what this gap analysis has shown in the needs assessment. Indeed, the identification of topics for this knowledge exchange is kind of clear now to us, as we've seen that the priorities for knowledge sharing differ, of course, but some common ones are the additionality, materiality principles, clear guidance for the MRV, cost effectiveness of MRV schemes, and also for robust of MRV schemes. So these things have to be clear, crystal clear for all, and no fraud can take place. And yeah, and also we have seen that in terms of the capacity building activities, that several member states would prefer, let's say, quite face-to-face meetings in a way, and shorter type of meetings in order to get the real information they require on that. Now, other issues that we have faced on the gap analysis, which were not really reflected maybe 100% in the needs assessment, is first of all the evaluation ready programs, so that when we set up policies, it means that it would require that the whole evaluation process is clear before and after the finalization of the policy, in order to come up with ex-post clear data on what has happened, and it's easier afterwards to report. Then that's about the opportunities and benefits for the energy efficiency. That's important. It's a standard graph we all know. That has to be quite clear also for the policy makers in order to better sell the message towards the target groups. Another one of the issues that is being faced, and there are a lot of open discussions, is the taxation. Member states do have a clear guidance now on how the taxation should be defined, but still it's one of the difficult measures in order to estimate, as they need short-term elasticity, short and long-term elasticities, definition of how they're being calculated, etc. Another policy that we see quite an interesting, and there is a lot of gap, on how to implement it. There are some good examples, but still there is an open hole, is the energy efficiency auctions, so the tendering mechanisms. There are some nice examples on that, also from RAP, from our colleagues from RAP. Yeah, and that still demands quite some attention. That's something that we will, of course, offer advice during the ENSMOV project. Transport is always a difficult sector, as there is quite diverse policies to be implemented, and the financing part is how to mobilize private resources to invest in energy efficiency. There is a lot of technical guidance, there is a lot of reports, a lot of Horizon projects and other EU projects on how to leverage private finance, but as we can see, still it remains an always problem. And the last one is we mentioned about the energy poverty. Indeed, yes, there is a clear mentioning. Member states do think seriously about the energy poverty now under their Article 7 policies, and by the end of the evaluation also of the national energy and climate plans, we will have a clear vision of how many countries work on energy poverty under their policies. Now, an important element on the ENSMOV project, indeed, it's not, as we said, it's not about only administrative authorities, and this distinguishes ENSMOV from the other running projects, but it's also capacity building and exchange of knowledge with the general stakeholder groups that participate in the Article 7 policies, and they can be their target groups, or they can be facilitators, or they can be actors in the policy implementation. There are different means. There is a knowledge exchange cycles, so there is a lot of this type of meetings that will take place on the stakeholder level and administrative level between countries with the same problems and issues and needs. And also we have an open forum, this ENSMOV LinkedIn group that you will just see here. It's a discussion group. You can scan the QR code and join the discussion group. Apart from postings on what we do and what the ENSMOV generates, you can also post, your country's issue or specific aspects you might have on the Article 7 ED implementation, and some nice discussions can come up from that. And that's the website, the project website, where you can see everything about the project. Keep in mind that shortly after a couple of months, we'll be launching a platform which will be dedicated for the Article 7. I think the title is simple, Article 7 ED.eu. And from there, you'll be able to read everything about Article 7 and what is happening, and also find quite a lot of materials for trainings and ideas on specific aspects, as we mentioned before. Here is again our web links, and feel free to subscribe to the ENSMOV newsletter, as we'll be launching a lot of interesting insights and on the progress of the Article 7 implementation, but also on ideas and solutions to practical problems that come up from the Article 7 ED. Thank you very much for your attention. I think we can take some questions if you want.
Vladis, Jean-Sébastien speaking. Maybe not a question, but a comment that we are finalizing. We are preparing the final version of the snapshots about EEOs and alternative measures, and hopefully this would be ready by the end of this month.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sebastian. So that's also another output of this project. Okay, if there are no further questions, then I would like to thank you all for participating. As we said, this webinar this lunch seminar will be public on the YouTube channel, and you can always contact us for more information on the project and on the outcomes of the ENSMOV. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, guys. Goodbye.